Well, hello, everybody. My name is Joyce Spagnoni. I'm the implementation partner for All for Youth. And I'm really excited today because we have an HR specialist of note who's going to be sharing some tips on how you can update your CV, get better prepared for that interview, as well as make your journey a little bit easier in looking for that great opportunity. Darusha has been awarded 100 most influential global HR professional by the World HRD Congress and is an HR leader of the year for future HR. We're excited to have her, and she's made many contributions to our HR community, and we'd love for her to answer a few questions as well as share a few tips. Darusha, you can take it away and enjoy, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much for the wonderful, warm welcome. It's so wonderful to be here and to share a few tips and insights regarding employability. It's a very tough time that we're living through. Unemployment is really at its highest. It really has been an issue across South Africa, across the African continent. And it's become increasingly difficult now with the COVID-19 pandemic to be noticed when there's so much of retrenchment going on. The rate of unemployment seems to be increasing. And really the question is, what more do we need to do? What more do we need to understand in terms of getting ourselves noticed out there? And today I'm just here to share with you a few tips and insights from my professional background, from my professional experience, from my own experience of being an unemployed youth coming straight out of varsity many years ago, not able to find employment. Thankfully for myself, I landed up in the HR career, spent predominantly most of my career in the recruitment space. And that's where I really learned a lot around how to get yourself noticed, but also in terms of the gaps that we're seeing that actually prevent individuals from becoming employed. So I've got a couple of items that I wanted to share with you over the next hour. And I think the first item that I'd like to start with is self-awareness. So self-awareness is so incredibly important. Being able to truly understand who you are, what your likes are, what your dislikes are, what your passions are, what your interests are in life. It is so important to really, truly be able to know yourself from the core. And I'm saying this because if you don't truly know who you are and why you're here and what you're all about, you cannot expect anybody else to be able to notice that and to give you employment. So I would say, firstly, get to understand who you are. Fall in love with yourself, so much so that when people meet you, when people see you, they know what you stand for. They know what you're here for. They know what you're driven by. So take the time to get to know you. And if that means, sitting down with a piece of paper and writing down all the things that you enjoy and all your likes, and what really motivates you to be who you are, to be the best version of yourself, then that's what you need to do. Maybe take the time to speak to friends. I mean, the people we spend most of our time with know and understand us so very well. So take the time to maybe spend time with them, and let them tell you what is it that they enjoy about you and how do they see you and how it is that you really show up in the world. You'll be quite surprised around some of the things that people may pick up on us that we may not notice about ourselves. And these might be the same traits, the same skills that we're showcasing across in interviews that recruiters and potential employees may pick up about ourselves. So I would say definitely start there. Self-awareness is so important. Secondly, before you even go out there starting to look for a job or putting a CV together, your personal brand is so crucially important. Your personal brand is really your marketing tool. It stands for who you are, what you represent, what you're all about. And really, your brand really says everything about you, right? So you actually need to be absolutely conscious of this brand that is you and how it is you're showcasing yourself to the world and to employers out there, to recruiters, and so on. So there are thousands of people that are applying for jobs. right? I mean, the pool of available jobs is very limited. If I haven't met you, how am I supposed to know who you are? It's very difficult for me to simply look at your CV and be able to tell what kind of person you are. You need to do more than that. So what I'm saying to you here is that you need to use different tools around how you can get noticed. And one of the things that you can do is use social media to be able to get yourself noticed, to get yourself the attention that you deserve. LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. A good percentage, about 90% of recruiters actually use LinkedIn to find candidates. It's a wonderful marketing tool that you can use to get yourself noticed. And a few things that you could do, for example, your LinkedIn scratch should be really up to scratch, right? Your LinkedIn profile should be up to scratch. You need to make sure that your achievements are showcased there, that you've got a great profile summary that showcases your interests, your motivations, what it is you're really looking for, and so on. But once you've actually taken the time to do that, I would strongly advise that you're continuously posting on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're posting, I would say 3 to 4 times a week, posts not related to what you did on the weekend, but more professional type of posts that really helps people understand how you think, what you're all about. So say, for example, maybe posting on something that you're really passionate about. Maybe you were involved in some project over the weekend and it was a charity drive program and you're really passionate about giving back to the world in a really meaningful way. And so you go onto LinkedIn and you share a post about something that you did, maybe post up a picture of the activities you were involved in, of the people you met, of how you made people feel, and so on. So when I go onto your LinkedIn profile and I start to look at the different posts that you're posting, it now immediately gives me an idea of who Jane is, right? Wow, Jane actually seems to be somebody who's quite interested in serving others. She seems to be quite a caring, compassionate soul. She could be somebody I may want to employ in the HR space as an HR graduate, because she seems to have an interest in serving the needs of people. Now imagine, without even looking at your CV, without even meeting you, just by your post, I have gained a whole lot of insight into who you are and what you're all about. And that in itself is incredible. So imagine if you continue posting, what happens is on different things, it could be work related, it could be, community involvement, it could be volunteer work, but something that's really relevant, that's really gonna kind of create this image about who you are. Once you start doing that, you will immediately start to see that you will start to develop followers, right? Because people enjoy reading your posts because they're getting an idea of who Jane is. And when that starts to happen, it's really amazing for your profile. What I really must warn you about, social media profiles like Facebook, for example, I must be really honest, recruiters do go. I mean, I personally would go into somebody's Facebook profile if it's an open profile, and I would go and look at, the kind of post the person is posting, what kind of activities they're getting involved in, what kind of comments are they making, how are they writing, how are they structuring their sentences, and that tells me a lot about the person. So you can use social media to your advantage. You don't want to have a closed profile on Facebook. You want to have an open profile, because you want these recruiters and employees to go into your profile and see what you're all about, right? So you need to be so particular about the kinds of things you're posting. Definitely don't want to have a picture of you drunk out of your mind on the weekend, partying with friends. It doesn't look as professional. So make sure that you use your social media profiles to your advantage so that people get to know and understand who you are at your core, right? I think it's a really incredible and it's a really powerful tool to get yourself noticed, to get your brand noticed. So definitely, take the time to invest in marketing your profile in that way. So moving on to, let's look at, so we've covered self-awareness, we've looked at personal branding. Let's look at job hunting techniques and some of the things that you could do around trying to get yourself noticed. So, there there's obviously a lot of jobs out there, and maybe at sometimes there aren't as many jobs, or it's quite a tough environment out there, and you want to be able to really stand out in a crowd, right? So some of the ways you can actually get to do that is to identify companies that you'd like to work for. Make a list of a couple of companies that you'd like to work for. Go through their profiles, go through their website, find out more about their vision, their mission, their values. Does the company kind of resonate with who you are, their culture, etc.? And there's nothing wrong in actually writing a cold email to the recruiter of the company or to the manager in that organization, to find out if they might be interested in having an exploratory informal chat with you. And how you could go about doing this is, by writing a very short email saying that, you've expressed interest in working for the organization, you feel that, you'd like to do more research about the company, to understand the company better, to see if the company might be a right fit for you, to understand their product offerings and so on. I mean, if I was and I used to be in recruitment, I spent a lot of time in recruitment, I've headed up recruitment, I've also been a recruiter. But if I had a message like that was sent to me, I would absolutely be honored, because there is somebody out there who is taking the initiative to get themselves noticed, but also who is showing interest in my organization, right? Who wants to know more about the culture of the company that I work for, more about our service offerings. And I highly doubt that a person would say no to something like that. Generally, people in this space, especially in the HR environment, generally they are the kind of people who want to help people. So they would actually feel quite honored to accept an invitation to have an informal chat with you, to give you details more about the company and what it's all about. Now, during that informal chat, what's really happening is it's actually an informal interview, right? And that's really what you called yourself into, an informal interview. So while you're getting to speak to the manager or to the recruiter during this informal conversation, they are also getting a feel of who you are, what you're all about, your passion, your interest, and they are also getting a feel of whether they think you might be a right fit for the organization. And I tell you, they will remember you, right? When they have a job opening, they will remember the fact that you took the initiative and you took the time to actually go and meet with them to find out more about the organization. And that's one of the ways in which you could actually stand out, right? So definitely think about doing something like that. Look, out of the 10 companies that you email, maybe one of them might come back to you. And if one of them comes back to you, I think it's good enough, right? So definitely focus on doing things like that for yourself. So the other item I want to really focus on is on CV writing. Now, your CV is definitely another tool that you could use, like your LinkedIn profile, to be able to market yourself. And you want to be really smart about how you go about putting your CV together. You really want to make sure that your CV resonates and aligns to who you are, and that without a person meeting you, they have a very good idea of what you're all about and what you can potentially offer to an organization, right? So when you actually start writing your CV, let's start with your personal details, right? Because that's usually where you would start when writing your CV. Now, it's not necessary for you to add details such as your ID number. I often see ID numbers on CVs, and to me, I feel like what happens is when a person sees your ID number, they immediately know what your age is, right? So it might serve to your advantage or your disadvantage, because some people unconsciously are discriminatory, right? Say, for example, they're looking for somebody that they would hire into a role in the early 20s and you're in your late 20s. Immediately now they've made a sense of judgment about you, right? What you shouldn't add to your CV is your address. It's not necessary for people to know where you live. And I tell you this because there may be a position that's based in Johannesburg, as an example, but you're residing, say, in Cape Town, and you're willing to relocate to Johannesburg for the role. But the interviewer doesn't know that. The moment they see that you've indicated that you live in Cape Town, they will immediately exclude you from the process, right? So you're disqualified, because in their minds they're thinking, oh, this person probably isn't even going to get you for an interview, and it's just going to be a hassle with relocation. They've already made up a whole lot of things in their head about the fact that you live in Cape Town, and you have no idea that they're doing this, right? So I would say avoid adding location onto your CV. It's definitely, your name, your surname, that is important. I think have your link to your LinkedIn profile on your CV, which would be great, and your mobile contact details. And please make sure that when you add your contact details, you are adding a contact detail that is relevant, and it is, I know some of you may have some cards for WhatsApp messages and some cards for telephone calls. Make sure you're providing the right contact detail, and you want to have your email address on your CV as well, right? So they've got two ways of contacting you. So that's to do with your personal details. Further to that, you would then need to work on your profile summary. That immediately comes next. So your profile summary is the most important part of your CV. I tell you this because a recruiter will look at your profile summary to see if they're interested in looking at the rest of your CV. Once they look at your profile summary, they will tell whether you're actually suitable for the job or not, right? It actually takes 30 seconds for a person to look at your CV and decide. That's how quick it is. And what you really want to do in your profile summary is to grab the attention of the recruiter. So in your profile summary, you could do this in about 10 lines or so. A short paragraph that kind of showcases who you are, your background, a little bit more about some of the experiences that you've had. Look, you don't necessarily, if you haven't had work experience, it's fine. It's okay. You can add, experience around volunteer projects that you've worked on, around projects, around, debates or speeches that you've been involved in, around some sporting achievements that you've had. But really what you want to do in your profile summary is kind of showcase your achievements, who you are, what you're all about, what you're looking for, outstanding skills around, interpersonal skills and creativity and, communication skills. These are the kind of skills you want to showcase, and achievements in your profile summary, right? So, it's very important that you take the time to be able to create that profile summary in a way that really showcases the best of who you are, right? And what you're all about, what your motivation is, and what you're potentially looking for. Right? So that is very important. Now, this profile summary can actually be edited every single time you apply for a job. So depending on the kinds of jobs you apply for, you can align that profile summary in accordance to the requirements of the job. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to go in there and give false information. All I'm saying is that you need to write your profile summary in such a way that it aligns to the requirements of the job. So say, for example, you know that you're applying for, say, a sales consultant job role, and the role requires great communication skills. So what you want to be sure of doing is in your profile summary, somewhere you want to indicate that you have been able to use your communication skills in really impactful ways during speeches and debates that you've been involved in. So immediately the recruiter can say, wow, okay, so this person has great communication skills. We could potentially consider him or her for the particular role that we have available. So that's what I'm saying. So be very smart about how you do that in terms of your profile summary. Then moving from your profile summary, you then probably want to have a list of your different qualifications. Now here, if you've got minimal work experience, and if you've got no work experience, what you want to be sure is that you've got a list of every single certificate, even if it's not a degree or a diploma, that you have done. Right. So, there's a lot of online courses that we can do now that's available to us. You can make a list of all of those different courses that you've done, because then it shows, that you have some kind of knowledge around some of the things that might help you find a job, even if you don't have the work experience, right? What you definitely want to do is, of course, you've got to have your secondary qualification and your undergraduate qualifications, such as your diplomas, your degrees, any postgraduate qualifications, and then the rest of it would be the list of courses that you've done, right? No matter how small they are relevant, right? Please know that they are relevant. You also want to make sure that you have your latest qualification at the top in terms of date order, so your most recent qualification at the top. So once you've done that, you now move on to the rest of your CV, which is now your work experience. So again, you need to have your most recent work experience right at the top of your CV. Here, all the information you need to provide here is, generally the period that you worked, the title of the role, and you're going to have a list of your duties, right? And there's something more that you need to add that I'll speak to you about in a little bit more detail. So if you've got minimum work experience, then you want to be sure that you're as detailed as possible, right? Because there might be duties that you have had in your job role that might be relevant for different types of roles, that are out there. So say, for example, if I'm looking at your CV as a recruiter, right, and I'm going through a list of, so say, for example, you're a call center agent, right, and I'm looking at your list of duties and looking at the fact that, okay, you've got great customer service skills, you know how to communicate with clients, but you've actually listed in your job description that you've actually done some additional work. So say, for example, there was some mini project that you worked on during your time at the call center, and you had to maybe come up with a solution around how we manage difficult clients, as an example. And you were part of this project team that worked on this, and you came up with, you did a whole lot of analysis and research, and as a team, you came up with a brilliant report or a proposal on how call center consultants could handle RA clients, right? Now that immediately tells me, like, wow, she's not just a call center consultant, but she shows that she has some project management ability. She definitely shows that she has initiative, she can apply problem solving ability. So just by indicating that a little bit of extra information into your CV, I'm now getting to understand all these different skills that you have. Right? So, people always say, keep your CV short and simple and so on. But I would say if you've got minimal experience, then you really want to showcase as much as you can about yourself in each of those job descriptions. What you also want to do for each and every single job, you want to list a key achievement. Now, this is absolutely important. Well, not for every single job. I would say maybe your top 3 to 4 jobs, right? Or the jobs in which you really kind of stood out. Now, when I say list an achievement, most people would think that I would have needed to have received an award of some sort. It doesn't necessarily mean that you needed to have received an award or you needed to have been acknowledged for something that it is an achievement. An achievement could be something that you, in your eyes, believe you really worked hard for and that it was a great outcome that you had. Right? If I use an example of the kind of achievements that you could showcase here, it could probably be something like, let's take the same example. For example, the project that you were involved in, you could showcase that as an achievement that you had, this is what you worked on. And as a team, you came up with a brilliant solution that was actually implemented in the call center. And it actually really improved the client retention rate. Right? So that's kind of how you want to showcase your achievement, right? So it's very important for you to do that. Moving further down into your CV, I would think the rest of the information that you really want to showcase there would be probably any additional work that you've undertaken. So any volunteer work that you've done, whether it's involved in church activities, in charity drives, helping the community in some way, any sporting achievements that you've had, extracurricular activities. These are items that you should have on your CV. Now, people always say that they don't think that this is important, but it's very important because, as I mentioned before, the example of the charity drive program, said so much about the person who was involved in that activity. So in the same way, be open about sharing these different sides to you, because it's also showcasing who you are and what you're all about. Then the other one important item that I would say that you should not have on your CV is your references, right? Now, I often see that people would have a list of their referees. Now, what this means is you've given me an open invitation to call your referee at any time whatsoever because you've indicated their details and you've given me their numbers, right? So I can actually call them. Now, what happens is when a person now calls you a referee, this person has not been briefed on the job role you've applied for. They've not been briefed on anything whatsoever. And you know that call could go really haywire. So you don't want to add any reference list in your CV. You want to say that references will be made available when required, right? And when a reference is then required, the company will call you to ask for details of your referees, and that's when you will give them details of your referees. But then now you have the opportunity to go and call your referee and say, you will be receiving a call from one of the companies. This is a job role I applied for. Share the job profile to the person with the person so that the person is briefed on the position you're applying for, and they're in a position to answer questions more favorably. So, you know, it's important that, you know, you have those briefing sessions with your referees and that you do not add a list of referees in your CV, right? What else would you need to add to your CV? Yeah. So I think other important elements around CV writing is that you need to make sure that your spelling is completely in check, that your grammar is absolutely in check, that your alignment is perfect. When I go into CV and I start seeing spelling errors and grammatical errors, then I'm a bit concerned, because now it's saying to me, this person does not pay attention to detail. And I need somebody in a role where a person is accurate and can pay attention to detail. So recruiters read between the lines when they see how you structure your sentences. So take the extra effort to make sure that your spell checks are done, that, you know, have friends or colleagues or senior people maybe have a look at your CV to give you insight into how you can make it look as professional as possible. Yeah, also make sure you don't have any gaps in your CV. So sometimes you might find between two jobs there's, you know, a 6 or 8 months gap. So now as a recruiter, I've got to guess, what did you do in this time? You know, and I may make up a whole lot of things in this time around what you did. Ideally, what you want to do is, in between jobs, you still want to show that you have been busy with something. So whether it's volunteer programs that you've done, or whether it's studies that you've gotten involved in, or, you know, some initiative that you're involved in, or a small project or part-time work, showcase it in your CV as such. It is important to make sure that you close the gaps in your CV, right? So that you don't leave the recruiter guessing, you know, what it is you were involved in during, you know, between your job roles, right? So that kind of takes care of your CV. So moving from your CV onto job interviews. So now you've got this amazing LinkedIn profile, you've got an outstanding CV, you know, you're trying to get yourself noticed out there, you're using different ways in which to market yourself and so on. And now you've landed yourself an interview, right? So good on you. So you've landed yourself an interview, and now what next, right? So the first and foremost is, you're lucky that you've landed yourself an interview, right? So be very grateful for that opportunity. You need to firstly make sure that you have a copy of the job profile to prepare for the interview. Don't take it for granted that you know and understand what the job role is. Even though you've applied for it, you may not have all the information available. So make sure you ask your interviewer for a copy of the job profile, not just the job description, because a job profile is actually quite a comprehensive document that outlays all of the attributes, all of the skills and competencies required for the job, you know, the cultural fit, and so on. It's very, very, very detailed. So ask for a copy of the job profile so that you can go through the job profile. Sorry, I just need to get some water. So once you start looking at the job profile, you'll get a very thorough understanding of what the job entails, what skills are required in the job. You might find that the job requires great interpersonal skills or great communication skills, great analytical ability, that the personality fit would be somebody who is willing to learn, willing to grow. It's a very fast-paced organization, and so on. So immediately now you're getting an idea of what this job role entails, right? What you need to make sure that you want to do is to start asking yourself questions about, do I have these interpersonal skills? Do I have these communication skills? Most often you think, oh, because I haven't been in a job before, I probably don't have these skills. But you do, because you do communicate with friends, right? Don't you? You do communicate with family, right? You probably have been a student. You've been involved in, student projects. So you have showcased some of these skills. Now you need to really go back and think about how have you really applied these skills professionally, and how have you leveraged these skills where you've had a really great outcome from that. Because what's going to happen is you want to start showcasing those skills when you actually land yourself that actual interview, right? But so now, in the meantime, you're just preparing for the interview, right? So you've got to go and really kind of have a very hard look at your profile and who you are and where you've developed these skills and how you've developed these skills and what projects you've been involved in, because you're wanting the recruiter during the interview to be able to see that you have these skills. The next thing that you definitely want to do is to understand the company. So you have to research the company. You need to make sure that you understand what the vision of the company is. What is the mission of the company, the products of the company, the values of the company, who are their competitors. This is very critical information, because in your interview, somehow or the other, you want to mention that something along the lines of, I see the values of your company is integrity. And for me, that is so important in my life, to be a person of integrity. Ethics means everything to me. Of course, you need to be genuine about this, of course, right? Because you don't want to go into an interview and just lie about who you are, because you're doing really a disservice to yourself. But by understanding what the company's values and mission and products and services are, it gives you a very good understanding into the organization. But it also helps you understand if you could be a potentially good fit to the organization as well, right? So you definitely have to do your research from that perspective. What I would then ask you to do is make sure that you've got a list of all of the interviewers in your interview, right? Generally, in an interview, you would have a person from HR, which would be either your HR officer or your recruiter. You would have the reporting line manager in the interview. That would be the person that the position actually reports into. And then you may have a colleague in the role. You may have a supervisor in the role. So you may have 2 or 3 people who would be potentially interviewing you for the role. What you want to do is go and research these people. You want to go onto their LinkedIn profiles and you want to go and have a look and see what they're all about. Because this you can use to your advantage, right? So you want to go and see, what their background is, what are their interests, what kind of work do they do, just to have some indication of the personality type, the personality of the interviewer. And I think that would also calm your nerves a little bit, because at least you're going into the interview having some kind of information about the person. You might find that with some of the profiles or some of the interviews, as you research them, that you may resonate with some of these qualities. You might find that by looking at the profile, I could probably have quite a nice conversation with this person because they seem to have the same interests as I do, right? So I think that's really helpful. And during the interview, of course, you can mention some of these things, and it just also helps to make a bit of small talk. You can bring into your interview, you can bring it into your interview comments in some ways, just gaining an understanding of these professionals and who they are. So definitely do your research on the interviewers. Then I would definitely say research competency-based interview questions. When we go into the next topic around the actual interview, I'm going to show you how you do that. But you actually want to look at what are the skills required for the job. And you already now, in preparation for the interview, you will be trying to assess whether you have demonstrated those skills in some way, right? So competency-based interviews, and we'll get into that a little bit later, is really, it's all focused on, it's based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So what it really says is, if you demonstrated past behavioral experience in a particular skill, it is likely that that behavior will be repeated. right? So that's really what it is. So that is why I've said to you, you need to go and have an honest conversation with yourself around how you've showcased some of those skills in different areas of your life in preparation for the interview, right? But we'll talk about competency-based interview questions in a little bit. So, other factors I would say that you need to do in preparation for the interview would be to make sure that you dress appropriately, right? If you're a smoker, make sure you've not had a cigarette before the interview, right? Because it just seems really unprofessional. You're coming to an interview and you're just smoked up, and it just doesn't look professional at all. You want to make sure that you have arrived 15 minutes early before the interview. So if it's a virtual interview, you want to be able to log in about 10-15 minutes before the session, so that you could actually have your nerves calm down. You've got time to actually breathe. You can take a sip of water and so on. Now you're in the interview session, right? You need to obviously make sure that you're dressed appropriately. So I'm not saying that you need to go in there wearing a suit, right? But you need to be dressed professionally and appropriately. Make sure that if you're a gentleman, you've got a collar shirt, a long sleeve shirt, a neat pants, decent shoes, polished shoes. If you're a woman attending the interview, a nice skirt, not a short skirt, a 3/4 length skirt, a neat shirt, or you could wear a long pants, right? And if you want not too high heels where you can't even walk and you're wobbling along the way and it's just showing that you're not looking very confident. So if you want to wear heels, maybe shorter heels, where you're comfortable and you can maintain your step and you maintain your posture and so on. You definitely, obviously, during the interview, you want to be able to maintain eye contact, smile, be enthusiastic. All of these non-verbal behavior is being noticed, right? And it tells a lot about who you are. So maintaining eye contact shows that you're quite confident. Remember, you've already gained some information about each of the interviews, so you don't need to be scared about going into the interview at all, right? You're well prepared, you've researched the company, you've researched the job role. This is your moment and you really want to make it happen, right? So I think it's very important that you pay attention to all of this. You want to definitely make sure that you listen attentively to the questions, that you answer appropriately, and we're going to go into discussions around how you can actually start answering some of the questions in the interview. But you always want to make sure that you speak slowly. If you need to think about something, take a sip of water. Helps you to pause a bit and to apply your mind and to think about what are you going to say next, right? So make sure you talk at an appropriate pace, that you're clear, that if you don't understand a question, ask for it to be rephrased. It's okay. It's okay to ask for a question to be rephrased, right? It doesn't show that that you have a lack of intelligence or anything like that. You're just asking for the question to be rephrased, and that's perfectly okay, right? Sometimes the way in which recruiters may ask questions might also sound a little bit complex, so it's perfectly okay to ask for the question to be rephrased. And you of course need to always show respect during the interview, right? And don't say anything that would be considered as inappropriate. You want to definitely be professional in terms of your demeanor throughout the entire interview. So now let's actually go into the actual interview, right? So we've covered quite a bit around the interview preparation, and I just want to make sure I've got my notes aside, that I've covered everything that we needed to, and yes, we have. So usually the first question that is asked in an interview, it's a killer question, and this is a question where you could really nail it, right? Most often it's asked in about 90% of questions. Tell me about yourself, right? And this is an amazing question for the interviewee, because this is your opportunity to showcase yourself, and to give them an indication of who you are and what you're all about. But while you're answering the question, you need to be very careful. You need to be very aligned to the job role and its requirements. And you want to bring in some bits about the job role and its requirements into who you are. right? So as an example, what you can do in answering this question is you're going to give them a background into to date. You have acquired so many years of experience in a particular profession, and you've acquired these relevant types of skills for the job role. Now, remember, you've researched the job role, you know what skills are required. So you want to bring those kind of keywords into your answer, right? And you need to be very smart about that. You definitely want to talk about some of your values. Now, you've already researched the company and you already know what the values of the company are. And if there's certain values like integrity, for example, that we used earlier as an example, you say, I am a person of integrity and these are the things that matter to me. So in your tell me about yourself question, you really want to give them a well-rounded explanation as to who you are, what you're all about, and so on. So the tell me about yourself question is very much similar to what's in your profile summary on your CV, right, that we talked about earlier, because that gives them a very great indication of who you are, what you're all about, your passion, your skills, your values. What are the things that matter to you? Hard work, determination, commitment. These are the kinds of words you want to use in that conversation that you have, right? So let's go into the actual questions, right? So you're asked a question, right? And normally in with corporate interviews, normally the types of questions that are actually asked are competency-based type questions, right? With competency-based type questions, as I've mentioned to you previously, it's based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So with your competency-based questions, what the interviewer would be trying to assess is whether you've actually demonstrated that skill in a previous situation, right? And I want to give you an example of what this kind of looks like, right? So let's use an example of, give me an example of a situation where you had to deal with a conflict, right? Now, with how you would see that the question is seeking to undercover if you're able to deploy diplomacy and people skills in a difficult social situation, or how you cope under stress, right? So here, really, essentially, what you're wanting to do is you need to describe a difficult situation and how you handled it. And this should include an example of when you've delivered maybe excellent customer service, or where you've achieved an outstanding result. Really, you want to describe a situation where you've had a positive outcome. You definitely don't want to describe a situation or give an example of a time where the outcome was negative, right? You want to choose the best example. And this is why I say when you actually start preparing for the interview, you need to know and understand your skills very well. That topic of self-awareness that we started with is so fundamentally important, because it helps you answer questions like this. Because when you know and understand who you are and what you're all about and what skills you are in a much better position to be able to showcase that skills in a very positive way, right? So essentially, you want to kind of go through this in your head over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? So that you truly know who you are. So when you start answering these questions, it's kind of second nature to you, right? You're able to actually think on the spot and be able to give an answer. So really, it is essential here in answering this question, you describe the results of your action. So the interviewer can see the positive outcome that has been derived from that particular situation, right? So I'm going to teach you about what is called the STAR technique. Now, the STAR technique is really, what it really stands for is ST stands for situation or task, A is action, and R is result. So when you answer questions, generally in interviews, this is how you should be answering the question. You should always be describing the particular situation or task that you were involved in, the action you took in that situation, and what was the positive results or outcome in that situation. That's how you need to train yourself to think every single time you answer a question. And I tell you why this is important, because it allows you to actually become very detailed about demonstrating your skill. It's very clear to the interviewer that you actually have that skill. Why? Because you've actually leveraged that skill in past behavioral situations, right? So the interviewer can see that you, yeah, okay, maybe you don't have the work experience as a call center consultant, as an example, but through projects that you've been involved in, they can see that you actually have the interpersonal skills or the communication skills, right? So ideally, interviewers want to see that you've got the skill for the job, or that you have the potential to develop the skill in that particular job. That's kind of more or less where you want to get at, right? So in answering the question, so let's go back to the question. Give me an example of a situation where you had to deal with conflict. So you could say something like this, right? So I was working as at the reception desk of my organization in my current role or in my previous role when a difficult client came in. He was frustrated that my boss couldn't make an important meeting at the last minute. I listened to his concerns, I got him a seat and a drink, and I went about trying to put some kind of resolution in place. Away from the reception desk, I found out that the managing director had been called away on an urgent personal matter. So by speaking to colleagues, I was able to source a head of department who had been partially involved in the project to take the meeting in his place. The client was relieved and personally thanked me after the meeting, as well as apologizing for his heated words when he first arrived. And the client is still with us today. So now what this actually says is, here you've demonstrated that you've had an irate client coming in, right? What you've also demonstrated is that you were able to calm him down, right? You offered him a seat. It also showed that you were proactive and that you took the initiative to find somebody else to attend to his situation because the manager or the head of department was not in at the time. And it also shows that the client was very happy and satisfied and that he's still a client at the organization. Now, just by answering the question in that way, it shows more than conflict resolution skills, right? You're very detailed. It shows that you have great customer service skills. It shows that you have great communication skills. So it shows so much more than just conflict resolution skills. It shows that you have initiative and that you're proactive and that you have the ability to resolve problems, right? So this is actually the way in which you should be answering all of your questions. Because it really gives the recruiter very deep insight into who you are and what you can potentially offer. And it showcases a combination of skills that you have, right? So that's your competency-based interview questions. So now you obviously you're done with the interview. You've answered all of the questions to the best of your ability. What you really want to do then is you will be given an opportunity in the interview to ask questions. Now, this is very important. There should never be a time you do not ask a question in an interview. You should always ask questions because it shows that you have an interest in the organization, that you have an interest in the job, unless, of course, there was something that came up in the interview that maybe you felt, this job isn't for me. Then maybe you want to clarify a point, to make sure that, you had the right feeling that the job wasn't for you. So I guess you would ask a question in terms of that. But really, the kinds of questions you want to ask, and these would be probably questions that you would have already prepared for prior to the interview. So you would ask questions like, can you maybe give me an idea of what a typical day in this job role would look like, right? So that's a good question because it gives you very good insight into understanding the job role. You could ask a question like, what are the typical challenges in the job role? You don't want to ask a question like, what is the salary of the role? It just looks really bad because it shows that you're just chasing after money. You don't want to ask the question like, what are the working times of the role? Because then they might assume that you just probably want to get up early. Maybe, you're asking the question because you want to plan better, but it's not necessary at this point to ask the question, right? So avoid those questions because interviewers can get the wrong impression, right? So those are kind of the questions that you can actually ask. And then at the end, you want to find out about when you would be contacted for the role, maybe, and you obviously want to thank them. You really want to be genuine that they, in your gratitude for having the opportunity to attend the interview. So you really want to thank them for being there. Now, what you should also do is after the interview, you want to do a follow-up, right? You're not going to phone and bug them about whether you got the job or not, right? But what's really going to make you stand out is to do a follow-up, right? And in your follow-up, it's basically an email note or a thank you email message that you're sending to the recruiter. And you're going to use this follow-up note or this thank you email to really reiterate your interest in the role, right? You're going to obviously highlight your relevant qualifications, your experiences, your skills that are aligned to the requirements of the role, and why you feel you would be a great fit for the role. You want to maybe clean up any interview mistakes. So say, for example, you might have not answered a question as appropriately as you thought or as detailed as you would have liked to have been. And you may want to clarify that in your email. And then you obviously, again, your spelling, your grammar, all of that needs to be checked. You need to, again, thank them for the opportunity and to look forward to hearing from them. So that's really what you want to do after the interview. And I would say, within the next day, you should definitely send that follow-up thank you email. And that allows you to really stand out because it shows that you're interested in the role. You've taken the initiative to actually write them an email and to thank them. It shows the kind of person that you are. It also shows that you're absolutely professional, and this is the kind of person who seems to be somebody who would probably go the extra mile, right? So make no mistake, all of these additional things that you're doing really, really allows people to read between the lines, to really get to know who you are and what you're all about, right? So yeah, I mean, that I think covers CVs and interviewing tips. I think if there's any questions from anyone, I would love to take on those questions. I think I actually did mention that I probably want to share a life story with you. So yeah, let me just spend the next 2 minutes sharing a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised in Durban, raised by my single mother. I never knew my dad growing up as a child. And I'm sharing that because in this country, we have a lot of people who have the same situation. I'm sharing that because I've come from a background where I was not rich, I was not poor, I was middle class. I had some challenges in my life that I had to deal with and overcome. And some of those things included things like, going through sexual harassment, going through an abusive relationship. It's kind of really been a journey for me to get to where I am today. And it's been a long, tough journey, but I always say, life is really consumed by pain and struggles. But I think those struggles really teach you a lot about who you are and what you are. And, it helps you to understand yourself better and to also appreciate the struggles in your life, because without having those struggles, you would have not had the learnings that you've had, and you've not had the growth that you've had. And I think all of the struggles and challenges in my life has really taught me to be determined. It's helped me to be resilient in my life. Even with graduating from university, I could not find a job as a graduate. So I actually worked for free. I worked for free for about a year and a half just to get experience. And I tell you, that was actually quite powerful. I worked in a role where I was doing some sales, but in that role, I was doing presentations, I was interacting with people. I was really enhancing my communication skills, my interpersonal skills. I was learning more about myself and my interests and who I am. And that actually landed me a job in Johannesburg, my first job in an HR role here. And that's when I moved up to Johannesburg, and that's really where my HR career had started. And so I was in a role for a bit, and then I moved into the recruitment consultancy world. In recruitment, as a recruitment consultancy, I worked for a recruitment agency for about 3 years. And in this role, I realized that I could really serve my purpose. So I always wanted to be a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, actually. And I've got my undergraduate degree with a major in industrial psychology, public administration, and then I've got my honors in psychology. But I always wanted to be the clinical psychologist, but I could not afford to go and study my master's degree in psychology at the time, because I had been in a job, I had debts to pay. And I said to myself, but I have a passion and purpose for wanting to make a difference in people's lives. And I can do that through the HR profession. And recruitment taught me that because it helped me to be in a position to help others. And I think that for me was so amazingly powerful and empowering and motivating that I could really be able to make a difference in somebody's life. And so I spent 3 years there, and then I moved on. And I must be honest, it was really tough. I worked really long hours. I learned a lot about myself. I really developed key and critical skills that led me to going on to a corporate job for about 3 years, working for a bank where I headed up their
Hey,
recruitment.
Dirusha.
Hello.
Quick one. It's just Joy. I'm noticing that we have a few questions. Sorry, just to interrupt you, from Facebook. So one of the questions is just to find out how you can ask your recruiter for the panelist that's going to be interviewing you. Can you just email them?
Absolutely. So if the recruiter called you for the interview, they probably would have called you or emailed you, and you could use the same method of communication to find out who the panelists are for the interview. So it's a very simple email, or you could do it on the phone. So when they invite you for the interview, you can ask them, can you please email me details of the job description and details of the panelists of the interview?
Awesome. And then another question was just about references. Is it okay not to put any references on your CV? And I'm just looking at the time as well. We've got a little bit of time left over, and I think we'll take that question and then just wrap up the session.
Sure. So with the references, is the question around the list of the referees or the actual reference letters? Do you know? Okay, so let me just answer it anyway, right? So if it's a list,
so it's on the CV,
as in the list of the actual referees in terms of who to call for a reference. No, that should never be on your CV at all. I did cover that in the discussion as well. It should not be on your CV, simply because the interviewer could then, or the recruiter could then just pick up the phone, call your referee, and you have not briefed your referee at all about the job role, what you've applied for, and so on. Ideally, what you want to have on your CV is to state references would be available upon request. And so if the reference is required, then you would give them details of your referees, but then you also now have the time to pick up the phone, have a call with your referee to say to them, this is a role I've applied for, send them a copy of the job description so that they're briefed and they know and they understand what it is you've applied for, and then they could actually speak to that when giving your reference. So ideally, that's what you want to do.
Awesome. Okay. There's one more question. If you can answer it in a minute for me. It's just about, I think it's one that we all ask. How do you respond to the question about how much to earn, or what's your expectation? Yeah,
that's a good question. So I would definitely you should never give a figure ever, right? So say, for example, the interviewer knows that the position is paying, say, 7,000 Rand a month for the particular role, right? But you don't know that, and they don't share it with you, right? So you don't want to say, I would like to earn 3,000 Rand a month for the role, because you're short selling yourself. Or if you said, I want to earn 10,000 or 12,000 Rand for the role, you're overselling yourself. So you really don't want to give any indication of salary. What you actually want to do is to say that I would like to be paid a salary that is in relation to the market and in terms of the skills and the values that I would contribute to the role. That's ideally how
Awesome.
Western.
Thank you so much, Darusha. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the tips that you have given us. To everybody who's joined, thank you also for joining us today. The live is going to be available on our Facebook, and if you do have any other questions as well, we can send those to Darusha, and she'll be able to respond. But again, thank you so much, Darusha, for your time, and also for the tips that you've given us. As we've shared, Darusha is the MD and founder of Beyond Transformation. Thank you so much, Darusha, and thank you to everyone for
Thank you.
joining.
It's
See you.
MD and founder of Beyond Transform. Sorry.
Transform. Awesome. Thank you, Darusha.
Thank you so much
Bye,
for having me
everyone.
here. All right. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.